Hey y'all. Sorry for the confusion. The way I set the live up on YouTube was not correct, and as a result, I couldn't go live. So if you're over there watching that one, I'm going to delete it, which is what I've just done. And hopefully other people will come over here and join me. Hey. Oh boy, sorry about that, y'all. I kept trying to press the button to go live, and YouTube was like, no, girl, that's not going to happen. So, welcome. Thank you for joining me on a Wednesday night for apartment chat. I have my hot chocolate, of course, with a little peanut butter whiskey in it, because why not? It's Wednesday. Why not? So thank y'all for finding your way over here. Sorry for the confusion. If you are new and you just happen to find this stream and you're like, what is this about? Hi, I'm Adelia Borishade. Most people know me as Picky Girl Travels the World. I live abroad in Mexico, and I help other Black women realize their dreams of living abroad, traveling the world, or doing whatever they want. So welcome to the channel. A few weeks ago, I can't remember when it was, I did a live. We were asking questions, and there were lots of questions about apartments in Mexico City, where I live. And I threw the idea out there. I was like, hey, do y'all want to do apartment chat? And several people said yes. So that's what we're here for, ladies. So if you've got questions, make sure you drop those in the chat, and we will get started. I think probably one of the first questions I generally get asked about apartment hunting and finding an apartment in Mexico City is like, how do you do it? Where do you go? Where do you find one? I have found both of my apartments on Craigslist, believe it or not. I had tried to work with I don't even know if they're called realtors here, agents, and it wasn't very successful for me. From talking to my friends, it seems if you've got a lot of money, maybe your experience with an agent is a little better than if you are, somewhere in the middle or somewhere at the lower end of the spectrum. I expect nothing less than this from Rashida about my peanut butter whiskey. That's okay. I'm not letting the haters stop me from enjoying good stuff. Okay, Alicia, Miss Hawkins. I was hoping you were going to show up because I know you had a lot of interest in apartment chat. So we were talking about like, where do you go? How do you find an apartment? There are quite a few websites like Vivanuncios, Inmuebles 24. And what I'll do is I will post a list of these websites. But, and like Craigslist is a thing here. Facebook Marketplace. I tried to look at some places on Facebook Marketplace. None of those panned out for me when I was looking. But there are lots of online sites, but really, y'all know this because I did a video about finding an apartment. I did one, I guess it was back in February, about my experience finding this apartment. That really, the best advice anybody's going to give you is to find the area you're interested in and walk around, because the vast majority of properties here are never listed on a website. It is simply somebody put up a say rent a sign in the window, and you reach out to that number to find out the details. There isn't, like in the US, you might go to the building and talk to somebody in reception. That doesn't really exist here for most apartment options. So that doesn't really work out that well. And again, y'all, if you've got questions, this is your chance to get them answered. Okay. Yeah, somebody, S. Taylor mentioned Century 21. There are like Century 21, I think I've seen Remax signs, and then there are tons of Mexican realtors or real estate agents. I'm not sure what the proper term is here. Tecnocasa is a very popular, I see they have like little storefronts in all the neighborhoods, and they publish a little booklet that will list what's for sale and what's for rent. It's called Tecnocasa. There doesn't seem to be a network of interconnectedness. So you may find an agent, but they're probably only going to show you the places that their company lists or that they've got a direct connection to, which is why I've had most of my luck on the online sites. And if you're trying, because I think one of the issues is if you're trying to find an apartment, but you're not here, and I've already told you that the best way to go about it is to like walk down the street. It's like, I'd like to find something ahead of time. I like to use the websites to get an idea on prices, to get a feel for what a neighborhood or zone's prices are, and to see what the inventory is. But ultimately, walking down the street pays off. Sheeta says, my building has a rental sales office. Yeah, but the price to rent directly from them was higher than renting from an individual owner. And I'll also say this about the kind of building she lives in. It's like a high-rise development. I don't know that that's a super common, like if you compared all of the housing options available in the city, I don't know that that's a super common one. But yeah, you can find that. I may have, okay. Okay, this is a good question. And I did want to talk about this. So thank you, Eartha, for asking this. Can you rent for 3 or 6 months instead of a year? This is one of the unique things about the rental market here in Mexico City. Landlords are not keen on leases shorter than a year. If you are lucky, you might find somebody willing to give you a 6-month lease, but you're going to have to work to find somebody willing to do that. If you go to places like Playa del Carmen, Puerto Vallarta, places where there are lots of snowbirds, where there are lots of tourist kind of seasonal people, it's a lot easier to find short-term rentals directly from the landlord. Here in Mexico City, generally, if you want to rent for less than a year, most people connect on like Airbnb to find a place. And then maybe you negotiate outside of the platform to get a better price. But yeah, I don't know if this is the same across Mexico, because you got to remember that Mexico City is sort of like its own state. So this may be a restriction here or a law here, but in Mexico City, there is great concern on the part of landlords about somebody getting into your place, not paying rent and squatting. It's very difficult for them to get those people removed. So that's why in Mexico City, you often find that the requirements to rent, there's like more hoops to jump through. I've talked about them wanting you to have a cosigner, a fiador. And one of the pain in the butt things here is that not only do they want you to have a cosigner, they want that person to own property outright in Mexico City. Now, as a foreigner, what are the odds that you're going to know somebody like that that's willing to sign on the dotted line for you? And so, or you have an eval, which is a similar kind of a thing. One way around that is to get, it's a Poliza Judica. It's basically an insurance policy that you, the renter, pay for, that guarantees the owner that if you don't come through with the rent, they'll be able to collect some money on that policy. So because of how difficult it is to get rid of squatters, to get rid of people who don't pay their rent, you find landlords here are not eager to rent short term, and they often want like more to get you in. So that is a road bump when you are looking for an apartment here. So I'm glad that you asked that, because that is an issue. Okay. All right, looking at your questions. Greta asks, what are the standard security deposits for temporary permanent residency? Okay, Greta, I think you're asking about, okay, I can still see. Those are my blue light glasses. I think you're asking about like the security deposit on the apartment and whether or not you get a better, you like, is the amount that they ask you to put down connected to your residency? Here's the thing. You're not required to have residency to lease an apartment. So, you know, if anybody watched the video that I put out this morning about the immigration situation here, Mexico kind of seems to be a place of contradictory sorts of things, that on the one hand, they don't want people to live here as a tourist repeatedly on tourist visas, but you don't have to have residency to enter into a rental contract. So there is no, I guess, as far as a standard security deposit, the expectation is a month. But if you don't, in Mexico City, if you don't have a cosigner, you don't, if you're not going to do a policy, they might ask for an additional month deposit, or maybe you negotiate something and you say, you know, I'll pay 3 months rent up front. Because again, the main concern that I have picked up on from landlords is they're concerned that you're going to get in the house, get into the apartment and not pay your rent. So I hope I answered your question, Greta. Let's see. Hold on, I lost my place, y'all. Okay. Is it more cost effective to rent an apartment for the summer, or would it be better to stay in an Airbnb? I'm curious about what it's like to live there. Oh, did I answer your question already? Now, one thing to keep in mind, because this summer in the various foreigner Facebook groups I was in, you heard over and over from people like, oh my gosh, the fees on Airbnb are so crazy. I'm trying to find this apartment, blah, blah, blah. What I noticed about that is the majority of those people who were struggling to find a place were only looking in 3 neighborhoods. They're the 3 neighborhoods that are most popular with foreigners, Roma, Condesa, and Polanco. They were only looking in those 3 neighborhoods, and they wanted like the place to themselves. I've mentioned this before, that here, if you are a single person, generally, if you're Mexican, generally you're not going to be living on your own. So there is very much a culture of having roommates and that sort of thing. So there are Facebook groups and sites. One used to be called Dada Room, but they've changed their name. I think they're called Roomie now, where you can find a room that's for rent. So if you want to live like a local, but you're only going to be here for a few months, it really might work better to rent a room in an apartment. It's quite possible to get a room and get your own bathroom if that's the issue. Okay. Beverly asks, what about houses for rental? There are houses for rent because I contemplated it because I have the dog and because I wanted some kind of outside space because I came back to Mexico City during the, I'm not going to say during the pandemic because the pandemic is still going on. But when I came back, one of my big concerns was having outside space of some sort. So I looked at houses. House rent ain't cheap. Not if you're like in the city proper. If you start to move away, kind of on the outskirts, you could get something nice and very, I think, very affordable. To give you an idea, a friend of mine was looking at houses, and they were looking at houses that would have at least like 3-4 bedrooms, significant outside space, and 40,000-50,000 pesos rent. So, and it's about 20 pesos to the dollar. So several thousands of dollars to rent a house. Other than the price, because there are varying price points, but other than the price, one of the reasons I opted not to go that route was because I didn't want to have to deal with trying to find somebody to cut the grass. And, you know, at least in my apartment, because there's security guards, if something happens, like there's an earthquake, they know to come look for me. When my packages come, they sign for them. If I'm in a house, I don't get any of that. But no, there are houses for rent, and that's totally a thing that people do. Do you need to show a Mexican bank account to pay rent? No, most Mexicans don't have bank accounts. So no, that's not an expectation. The only way to pay online in Mexico is to have a Mexican bank account. No. But having a Mexican bank account does sometimes make it easier to pay for things if you don't want to carry cash. But no, it's not a requirement. Like I said, most Mexicans don't have bank accounts. Okay. Alicia, excuse me. Do you recommend finding a notario? Are you buying property? Because that's really the only time I would get a notario involved is if you were buying property. If you're buying property, absolutely. Because a notario is like, they're a notary, but they have like way more power than notaries do in the US. So I don't know if that's the question you were asking. Okay. Um, like I said, you do not have to have residency to sign a rental agreement. Although, depending on how a place is listed, if it's listed through an agency, they may put that as a requirement that they want ID or that they want to see checks, pay stubs, that kind of stuff. But nah, you'd be all right. Okay, hold on. Aw, Beverly. I can never remember what these things are called. I keep wanting to call them Snapchats, but that's not super chats. Thank you, Beverly, for the super chat. Oh, my brain is getting old. Flo. Oh, I can't. Where's Flo? I see your super chat. Thank you so much. That's very generous. Okay. Okay. I knew this question was coming up. How do you select or know the nice area in Mexico to live? Does the price give a hint? I will tell you, don't make any commitment to a place. If I was coming here and I was a corporate transfer and there was somebody in the office handling everything, I might defer to their judgment. But if you're coming here on your own and you're moving, no, don't commit to anything until you can walk the neighborhood, because the place may look great, but until you can walk down that street and get a feel for the vibe in the neighborhood, you're not going to know. So that's why I always recommend get an Airbnb for a week, and see if you like that area. Areas that, like if you've joined the groups, you've talked to people, you've kind of gotten some intel on, like, I think these areas might be what I want. Spend some time in them first before you commit. And when you say nice, everybody's nice is not the same. I can tell you that myself, I look for here in the city when I was shopping for neighborhoods, I definitely was looking for places that were walkable. I wanted a neighborhood that had a park in it. Most neighborhoods here do, but not all. I wanted there to be cafes and bakeries. If you know me, that's not a shock. But I wanted those things in the neighborhood, because there are some neighborhoods here that don't really have that kind of vibe, that are much more like, what's the word? Business, less residential. Like one Airbnb I stayed in when I used to live here 4 years ago, it was a really nice neighborhood, but when you would go outside, like there were no taco stands. There was only like one little bakery, because primarily there were lots of offices in that area. And when those people went home, there wasn't anything around. So yeah, talk to some people and then go walk the neighborhood yourself to get a feel for it. I think that's super, super important. Can you stay for a month as a tourist? When you come to Mexico as a tourist, if you have a US passport, Canada, and a whole bunch of other countries, you can get up to 180 days to be here. So yeah, typically coming as a tourist for a month is not a problem. Okay. I have mentioned to y'all more than once that I made a conscious choice not to live in expat heavy neighborhoods. One, price. Two, I wanted to have to use my Spanish. And if you, in this city, if you are in Roma, if you're in Condesa, if you're in Polanco, seeing that you're a foreigner, they're going to talk to you in English first. And I didn't want that. But I will say, if you're looking at a map of Mexico City, looking at the neighborhoods adjacent to those. So everybody talks about Condesa, but there's a neighborhood just to the southeast of Condesa called Escandon, which I like it. It's a cool neighborhood. It's got trees. It's got a nice vibe. There are places to eat. There are locals there. So often I would start by looking at the areas that are adjacent, because you may want to have access to some of the stuff that is in those expat heavy neighborhoods, but you can be within walking distance without having to live in them, I think. Okay. This is another good question, Greta. Are most apartment rentals dog friendly? If you've ever been to Mexico City, or you've talked to anybody who has been here, they will tell you that Mexico City is super dog friendly. Like everybody has a dog. However, when I first was looking for an apartment the first time, it took me 2 months because I couldn't find anybody who would take the dog. And I have a small, well-behaved dog. And eventually what I learned to do was not to ask if a place allowed pets. If they made no statement, I took that as a yes. So I had signed my lease on the apartment, moved in, never mentioned the dog. This is my first apartment. Never mentioned the dog. The landlord came over because it was a furnished place, and he was bringing another piece of furniture, and he looked down and he saw the dog. He looked at me, I looked at him, and that was all that was said. With this apartment, I was getting ready to sign the paperwork, and I noticed in the paperwork, because it said nothing in the ad for the apartment about whether pets were allowed, but in the lease, it said no pets. And I was like, oh, that's going to be a problem. And so he and I came to an understanding, and we agreed on a pet deposit. So It depends, but this is a city where everybody has a pet, but it may take a little extra to find a place. With my girlfriend who lives with her in her family's home in maybe Taxco, Mexico, be able to co-sign for me in the city out? Possibly. It depends on what the landlord wants. Some landlords specify that, some don't. Yeah, it just depends. You may be able to find a place where they don't want a co-signer at all. Let's see. I'm looking at y'all's questions. Okay, I'm late. I'm slow. No mascota. Okay, furnished apartments. This is the other thing that is tricky if you are coming here and especially if you're like, I don't know if I'm going to stay a whole year. As I mentioned before, in this city, finding somebody who will do a month-to-month lease, a 3-month lease, a 6-month lease, that's hard. Furnished apartments, like if we're talking about out of all of the apartments, maybe 10, 15%. I don't know. What do you think, Rashida? 10, 15%, I think might be furnished. So you can find a furnished apartment. My first apartment, it was furnished. They threw in a washer dryer combo, went and bought 2 brand new beds because it was a 2-bedroom apartment. But when I was looking this last time, my issue was I could not find anything that I like the aesthetics of. And because, we're in the midst of a pandemic and at any time we could be locked down again, I wanted to be in a place that I felt good about. And I could not find some place that was already furnished that gave me good feelings. Also, I am a minimalist, and Mexicans, when it comes to furniture, they are maximalists. I see some of my neighbors in the building when they leave their doors open. I'm like, oh my God, how do y'all have so much furniture in that apartment? So I say all of that to say that I decided this time to get a place that was unfurnished. Now, we've talked about what unfurnished and furnished means here. My apartment did not come with a refrigerator. It has a stove and an oven, but I would have to buy a refrigerator. I would buy a washer because I'm not taking my laundry to the lavanderia. And I would need a bed and a couch. I figured like that was the bare minimum. And so I did a little Googling, checked some prices, and figured out how much that would all cost. I divided it by 12. And I was like, okay, this is like, I knew what I wanted to pay for rent. I added that and it still came out cheaper than if I rented a furnished place here. So I was like, as long as I'm here at least a year, I will not have wasted money. If and when I decide to leave, I can sell the stuff that I bought in Mexico City because there are always people coming and going. There are always, every day, literally, there is a post where somebody is saying, I'm leaving the city and these are my things that I am selling. So you can try and find a furnished apartment, but I know I struggled finding one that had furniture that did not upset me. I think I got through all of y'all's questions. I'm looking at my list. Okay. One of the concerns is like getting the right price or a good price and not having people take advantage of you because you're a foreigner. This is one of the reasons I like price compare online. So I will go on like Inmuebles 24, Vivanuncios, Casi, like all these different apartment sites. I'll go on there I'll look at the neighborhoods that I'm interested in and kind of see, okay, so this is what a 2-bedroom is going for in this area, that sort of thing. So I got a feel for the neighborhood. And then if I see a sign on a place, I take the number down. And I don't like talking on the phone in English. I definitely don't want to talk on the phone in Spanish. So I keep my fingers crossed that that number has WhatsApp. And so I will text them in Spanish. And there's one apartment when I got here last time, because I only gave myself a week to find a place. But I felt comfortable doing that because I had lived in the city for a year before. And our entire conversations, all of our conversations had been in Spanish. And I get there and he's speaking Spanish to me and I'm trying to follow along. And I said something about like, could you speak a little slower? And then he goes, oh, you speak English? So I try to do all of the talking in Spanish when we're trying to sort out price. Or either if I have somebody I know that can speak Spanish, I'll be like, hey, can you call this number and find out how much this place is? Versus showing up as an English speaker from the jump. So that's my little tip there. Still stuck on no fridge. I don't know. I guess it doesn't seem odd to me anymore. I think it's odd that there are apartments where there is no cabinets, that literally the kitchen is an empty room. There may or may not be a sink. Like that trips me out because like what? I didn't get the bottom of the line refrigerator. I didn't do that. I got maybe one step up because y'all know I don't cook. So it's not like you open my refrigerator now, all of the shelves are empty. The only thing in there are bottles of alcohol. So I didn't get like a mini refrigerator because what I noticed in the foreigner groups, when people are looking for refrigerators or people are trying to resell, people who have the small ones, they struggle reselling those. So I wanted it to be like a full grown refrigerator, but it didn't need to be fancy because I don't cook. I think I spent 3,000 pesos, like $150 on a refrigerator. I got it from Best Buy. And so they delivered it. I ordered it online. They delivered it. They brought it upstairs and they took it out of the box and they sat it in the corner for me. I think the washer might have been $250. No, there is nothing in my refrigerator. Absolutely nothing. So yeah. Now there are the super fancy double door, all of that kind of stuff. But I was like, I know who I am. I'm not cooking. So I didn't see the point in that. I did not see the point in that. So it doesn't have to be, and actually, you can actually get refrigerators and because some apartments don't come with stoves. Because somebody I knew who was here, she was moving to a new apartment that was furnished. So they were having to sell their refrigerator, their stove, their washer. And I was contemplating buying off of her, but I was trying to figure out the logistics of how to get it here. So I spent a little bit more so I could get it delivered brand new, no issues, because I didn't want to have to negotiate the Spanish. A year later, I might be willing to do that. But in the height of COVID, my Spanish was not great. I wasn't willing to do that. But if you buy it secondhand, you can actually get some pretty good deals. Okay. Someone asked about paying a year of rent up front. Would you advise against that? I actually contemplated it. It depends on what the situation is. Like the apartment that I was looking at where I contemplated paying a year of rent up front. It was listed through a realtor. I was not dealing directly with the landlord. And it all depended, because I think the reason I even contemplated it was they were like, oh, if you don't have an eval. And I was like, I could pay the whole year. But I ended up finding another place where I didn't have to do that. So I don't know. It just depends. It is not a standard thing. Like there are some countries where that, like in the Middle East, especially, where that is expected. That is not a standard thing here. And if you're going to do that, you should be getting a substantial break on the rent. If they're not going to give you anything, I wouldn't do that. Okay. No, the peanut butter is not in the refrigerator. It's in the cabinets, because I don't really have that's the other thing. What's weird about my apartment, I only have like 3 or 4 cabinets. It looks nice, but there's like hardly any storage, which is fine because I don't cook. So I don't need a lot of storage. But no, the peanut butter is not in the fridge. Okay, what if the landlord isn't good, but what if you get an excellent discount? Tough choices. Yeah, my first apartment was listed directly by the landlord. Sweet guy. I looked up, he spoke English, because again, I found it on Craigslist. I'm texting in Spanish. He spoke English. His wife, like he didn't even ask to see my passport. Like he was brand new. I think they had just bought that condo, and I think I was the first person they were renting it to. So I don't think he really had a good bead on how things were supposed to go. He didn't even ask to see my passport. He didn't ask if I had a job. It was just like, can you pay the rent? And I mean, we signed a lease. And so like I got a very good vibe off of talking to him. His wife was a language teacher. When she found out I used to be a teacher, she was like, oh yeah, let's throw in a washer and dryer, to get her to come and take the apartment. Yeah, that's exactly what I did, because I did not want to send my clothes out. If I don't cook, if you don't cook, do you eat out a lot? Yeah. Mexico City, there's food everywhere. So no, it's cooking here. You cook here because you like it. If you don't like cooking, you don't have to. I think I saw another. Sinks are negotiable. This is the thing. When I first moved here, the 4 years ago, is it 4 years ago? I think it is. My math is off. And I started looking at apartments. I didn't even realize that that's what I was looking at. But then I started to notice that some of the listings would say cocina integrada, integrated kitchen. And what they're telling you is, yes, there is a kitchen here. There are cabinets. And this one apartment I was considering, which happened to be in Escandon, it's an older building. And I'm looking at the pictures, and I'm not realizing until somebody I showed it to pointed out to me that what I was looking at, which looked like just an empty room, was technically the kitchen. That if I moved in that apartment, I wouldn't just have to get furniture. Like I'd have to create a kitchen. I tend to find that in older buildings. Like the building I live in now, I think is like 6-7 years old. That's not really a thing here. But yeah, a lot of our assumptions about what should come in an apartment are different here. Okay. Do some apartments have maid service included in the rent? Yes. I have never stayed in one of those, but that is a thing here. I know someone who is going to be renting a room. So she's going to be staying in an apartment with 2 Mexican professionals. And included in the rent that she's going to pay is cleaning service. That is something common. And I'm glad you asked this question because it made me think of something else. Sometimes you might see an apartment listed and they'll tell you, oh, we include all services. Well, coming from the US, you're thinking, good, I don't have to worry about utilities. Y'all, my water bill is $2.50 for 2 months. Okay. I just paid my electricity bill. It was 111 pesos. So what's that? Like $5.50 for 2 months. My gas bill is a little bit more expensive. It's usually $15, $20 for 2 months. And maybe they include internet. Internet might be another $20, $25. So if they are advertising this apartment and it might seem a little expensive and you're thinking to yourself, oh, but it includes all the services, most of the services don't cost that much. So keep that in mind as you're like dissecting price. But yes, there are some apartments that do include cleaning service, and Rashida makes a very good point. Looking for it, like getting somebody to come clean your apartment, you'll be surprised at how affordable it is for you. And then you can choose the person and y'all can work out your own thing. So yeah, it's definitely not something like, just like you don't, an apartment including utilities isn't that big a great of a thing. Same thing with cleaning service. Okay. Let's see. Okay. If internet is not included, how do you get access? Do you pay the landlord for it separately? I have not had a landlord that was willing to do internet for me. When I talked to both of them, they were kind of like, oh, you can get internet. And so that's what I did. The first time I moved here, I had considerably less Spanish. I called, because, okay, in Mexico City, who your internet service provider is totally dependent on your neighborhood. So that's the question to ask the landlord is, who does internet over here? Or you can do what I did, which is pull up the available networks and see, like you'll see Total Play, you'll see like Telmex, Infinitum, and that sort of thing. Or, you find out who's available in the area and then you contact them. You try to figure out who's the best of who's available in your area, because that varies. Like I have Telmex, which I think is fine, but there are other people in other parts of the city and they're like, oh my God, Telmex sucks. And so I contacted, in my other apartment, I called the number and I kept pressing the button, trying to get somebody English speaking. And like when they would come on and I'd be like, hablas inglés? And then eventually they found that one person in the office who spoke English, and we were able to schedule them to come and set it up. Same thing with this apartment with Telmex. I didn't call them. They have a WhatsApp. So we texted and set up for them to come and install it. You don't need residency to get that connected, not here in Mexico City. But I think some landlords might be willing to help with that. Neither of mine were all that interested. Do most buildings provide water delivery? I don't think so. I think water is left up to the individual. I don't know. Maybe in fancy buildings? I don't think so. I think everybody's just on their own. So there are companies that will deliver water to you. You can set that up. There are guys who ride down the street on these trikes that have bottles of water. You could connect with them. They're also, in most neighborhoods, there are these little I guess sort of like bodegas, convenience stores, and they often sell water. So like when I go downstairs in my building, there literally I walk down the stairs and right there is a store. So I could have bought my water from him, but then I'd still have to walk up 8 stairs to get it to the elevator, and I didn't want to do that. So I got a water filter instead. But you can get water delivery, but it won't be through the building. Because this is the other thing. Unless it is a new building that maybe is still, the developer is still trying to sell out units, each apartment in the building is owned by somebody separately. So there's not a whole lot of collective building activities. Okay. I just lost my place, y'all. Sorry. Aw. Uh, are you aware if there is a standard of construction codes and if they're built to sustain earthquakes? High rise would be a nice option. Yes, there are building codes. Now, was the building you're interested in actually built to those codes? That may be a different answer. This is something that kind of clicked for me when I was here in 2017 and there was the big earthquake on September 19th, because there were buildings that sustained damage and buildings that collapsed that should not have given their age. There was a very large earthquake here on September 19th, 1985, where there was a lot of damage done, because you remember downtown Mexico City used to be a lake. Tenochtitlan was in the middle of a lake. And so there was a lot of damage. There were major changes to construction codes. But what we learned in 2017 was that some developers cut corners. And at the time, because I was struggling to find an apartment that would allow my dog, I had been contemplating, well, maybe I just need to buy a place. But it had never occurred to me that, oh, you would need, like, if I were to buy a place, I would really need to hire a structural engineer to come and look at the building to make sure that, oh yeah, they built this the way they're supposed to. Some of the if a building is very tall, if it's like over 10, 15 floors, oh yeah, it's been engineered to the nth degree, because you don't get to build buildings that tall here without them being engineered for that. But if it's something, you should be able to ask your landlord, and they should be able to produce from Protección Civil. There's like the civil protection agency that does inspections and that kind of stuff. They should be able to give you some information if that is a concern. Are you able to have your groceries delivered? Yeah, you can get anything delivered here, which is part of the reason I don't cook. Literally, there is a service on, I think it's Rappi, where you can have them basically go run errands. So you can tell them, like, go to the movie theater, buy me a bucket of popcorn. You could have them do whatever. So yeah. How is the plumbing in Cdmx? I hear flushing with tissue is not recommended. Yo, I am fascinated at how fascinated everybody is with the toilet tissue topic. Now, when I lived in Honduras, we could not flush toilet paper, but it was obvious. Like, the water that came out of the tap smelled in Honduras. The plumbing is fine. If you're in an older building, that may be different. But if you're in a newer building, it's not really a problem. It's not really a problem. Yeah, you can get anything delivered here. Now, on a different note about toilet paper, if you don't like your toilet paper scented, that might be a little tricky. finding toilet paper that does not have, finding anything that does not have fragrance added to it. That's a very popular thing. So I don't know if that's a concern. One of the questions that comes up a whole lot is about the best neighborhoods. Um, there are a bunch of good neighborhoods. People, this is what I often see in the foreigner groups is people will post like, what's a good safe neighborhood? Um, there are a lot of them. So really, because when you move to this city, where you live, yes, you want to live in a neighborhood that's got the vibe you want, whether you want restaurants, whether you want bars. Like my neighborhood would be a horrible one if I wanted to hang out at bars, because I think there might be one. So there's that. But if you are going to if you've got a kid that needs to go to school, if you've got a job that you need to go to, or if there's some place that you need to be close to, that typically will determine where you want to live, because traffic here is horrible. It's horrific. There's really no other word for it. I see we're still talking about TP. I did figure out which brand is kind of soft, although I feel a little like I don't have any idea of what toilet paper costs in the United States. So I'm not sure if I'm paying through the nose to have soft toilet paper. I feel like I probably am. But yeah, the regular toilet paper, definitely rough. Okay. Do y'all have any other questions regarding apartments? We talked, I think one of the things that I mentioned in the live that kind of sparked the request for this one was about the price difference between a 1-bedroom and a 2-bedroom apartment. That it goes against what you would expect coming from the United States. In the United States, we would expect that a 1-bedroom would be by default cheaper because there's less square footage. And what I have found here is that 1-bedroom apartments tend to be more expensive because locals do not live on their own. If you're not married, you either live with your family or you live with a roommate. So primarily the people coming who want 1-bedroom apartments tend to be foreigners. Therefore, those apartments tend to be expensive. Same thing with they call them lofts. They're efficiency apartments, and they tend to be more expensive unless it's really crappy. They tend to be more expensive than like the average 2-bedroom apartment. Thank you, Miss S. Taylor. Thank you so much. Did you hire a attorney or translator to review your lease? That probably would have been a good idea. But no, I did not. My lease for this apartment, now my landlord used an agent who apparently listed this apartment on the websites. I found it on Craigslist. So when I sent a WhatsApp message, I was communicating with the agent. They scheduled the showing. The landlord actually came. That was not always the case. And when I reached out and said, yes, I'm interested in the apartment, ask if, he will take X amount of money. So then she basically put me in contact with him, and they prepared, the agent prepared the documents. So the lease, they sent it to me electronically, and I just cut and paste and put it into Google. Like I could read it for the most part. But no, I cut and paste it and put it into Google. And when I found like the section that was like, oh no, you can't have a dog, he and I hashed that out via WhatsApp. You can hire an attorney. That's probably a really good idea, but I did not. I don't know what else to say about that, but yeah, you could. Because here's the thing, if you get a lease that is in English, it's probably not legally enforceable. So for it to be a valid legal document, it probably needs to be in Spanish. Any thoughts on the Santa Fe area? It's not the place for me. It's a very nice area, except there is no the metro does not go out there, the metro bus, the trolleybus does not go out there. So if you're not going to drive, there are some buses, but buses in Mexico City are a whole different thing. So if you're not going to drive, I don't know about staying out in Santa Fe. It also, if you want it to feel like you live in Mexico, that's probably not where you want to be. But if you like high rises and, Bed Bath and Beyond and, a fabulous mall, they've got a nice park too. Yeah, it's great. Can you find roommates? Yes. Like I said, this is a very popular option. I think it used to be called Dada Room, but I think it's called Roomy now, where people who have rooms available will post them. Also in the various, there are specific Facebook groups, and when we're done with this, I will post those in the description. There are specific Facebook groups for Mexico City about like finding roommates. Yeah, Roomy is spelled Roomi. They've got an app now, but it used to be called Dada Room, where people post, they're looking for a roommate, how much, pictures, all of that. So no, it's very, very, very easy to do. How friendly are you with your neighbors? I speak, I wave. Yeah, I speak, I wave. I don't know. I if I was in the United States, I wouldn't do more than that with my neighbors. So there is a Venezuelan family that lives across the way from me, and they speak English. So anytime they see me, they are very happy to speak in English to me. Yeah. So I don't know. We're almost at an hour, y'all. So here's the thing. You wanted to talk about apartments in Mexico City. Did we answer your questions? Do you have any other questions or concerns about getting an apartment here? I wanted to be able to have a roommate because I would really like if you are renting a room, you could be paying, depending on where the apartment is and how fancy the apartment is, you could be paying anywhere between $150 to $500 to rent a room. So I definitely would have liked to have saved money and had a roommate, but I don't like people in my space. So, and with the Airbnbs that I stayed in, the vast majority of the time were shared. I got my own bathroom because that's a must. But living with another person full time, I'm not about that life anymore. So for me, I have to suck it up, and that means I pay more because I don't share an apartment. Renter's insurance is a thing, Kim. I don't have any. I probably should, but yeah, no, you can get renter's insurance, and that's probably a really good idea, but I don't have it. No, you do not have to have temporary residency to rent an apartment. Now, here's the thing, y'all. I told you, Mexico is a country of contradictions. No, you don't need residency to sign a lease. So you can come in with a 180-day tourist card, a 45-day tourist card, and sign a 1-year lease. Your time on your tourist card is up. You leave, you go back to visit folks at home, you come back, and you may get somebody in immigration who says, oh, okay, we'll give you 14 days. And you're like, but all my stuff is in the apartment. So Mexico will allow you to do things that don't make sense, given that you like don't live here as a resident. So that is something to keep in mind. That's that. When I originally moved to Mexico, I hadn't given much thought to residency. Like, I was like, okay, yeah, I'll do it. But then when I got an apartment, I was like, if I come through immigration and they won't let me back in and all of my stuff is here, I'm going to be hot about that. So that's what kind of lit a fire under me to go ahead and get my residency. If you are thinking about coming to Mexico and you already can feel it in your bones that you are going to be here more than a year, I would suggest applying for residency before you come, because I was kicking myself that I didn't do it before I got here, because then I had to, schedule time to go back and do it and all of that kind of stuff. It was a whole thing. Okay. All right. So I think we covered the big topics, which are where to find apartments. I am going to, in the description, give you a list of, Craigslist. Also, joining Facebook groups for foreigners and expats. You post, this is what you can do. You can make a post that this is what I am looking for. I would like an apartment with these characteristics, maybe specify a neighborhood or specify the attributes that you're looking for in a neighborhood. And you will be surprised at the number of people who are not even agents who will have something available. That's a very common thing. I don't know about posting your budget, especially if your budget is a high one. If you are like, oh, I could pay 20,000, 30,000 pesos, maybe you don't say that. Maybe you just wait and see what apartments get posted or shared with you. I always feel funny when people post their budget, because I think, to me, what you're telling people is, don't offer me anything cheaper, only offer me things at the top of my budget. So that's one thing. Okay. Is subleasing an option? It happens. As to the legality of it, I don't know. My lease is very specific that I am not allowed to sublease. I am not allowed to Airbnb the other bedroom. My lease is very specific. My previous apartment was not specific like that. And funny thing, I came back to Mexico City after I'd moved away, and I'm looking for Airbnbs in my old neighborhood. And I look and I was like, there's my apartment. He was renting it for like $10, $12 a night. But again, I wanted to have my own bathroom, so I didn't consider it. So people do sublet. How legal it is, I don't know. I don't know about that. Thanks for the super chat, Larry. Thanks, Ariam, for the super chat. Okay, so we talked about where to find apartments. We talked about, trying not to get charged gringo prices. We talked about how Mexico City is not a great place for short-term rentals, and that furnished apartments are not plentiful and may not suit your personal taste. And the only thing we didn't really get into a lot was neighborhoods. If there's a specific neighborhood you want to know about, I will be more than happy. But I don't know that this is the time to just go down my list of favorite neighborhoods. Okay. Neighborhoods to avoid. Doctores. I'm laughing because, people tell you don't go to Doctores. Well, I was reflecting on it today because I actually was walking through there. I was looking for a t-shirt shop, and there are a lot in a neighborhood next to it that are adjacent to it. And I thought about how the first time I'd been to Doctores, I was going to a Black expat meetup. I took the metro, and I was still relatively new to the city, and I had not been told that Doctores was someplace I needed to avoid. And so I walked from the metro to the restaurant. I didn't realize it was at night in the dark and I was walking through Doctores. So that's why I kind of laugh. I mean, yeah, it's a rough neighborhood, and there are some streets in that neighborhood that are very rough. For me, because I actually considered an apartment there. It was a former Airbnb very close to the border with Roma. Fully furnished. All I had to do was show up with my bags. But when I walked the street, there were no cafes. There were no bakeries. The street didn't have the vibe that I wanted. Further south is supposed to be avoided too. I don't know. I live south of there, and I don't think my neighborhood is one to be avoided. How far south? Because that's the other thing. Like way south, like Tlalpan, Tlapan. That's very far south, down past Perisur, but the prices down there are great. It's just so far. I wouldn't want to live down there. But no, there are a lot of good neighborhoods. There are places I would not live. Like, okay, I can't tell you. Well, one of them I can tell you is Country Club Churubusco. It's further south. When I came back in 2019 over the summer, I stayed in a bunch of different Airbnbs around the city because I knew eventually I would move back and I wanted to try some places out. And the place had Country Club in the name. And I looked on the map, there was a country club. So I was like, this should be good. I liked the Airbnb because it was basically like I had my own little cabana and a little yard for the dog. I got down to that neighborhood. It was not very walkable. They obviously, like in my neighborhood, they don't get a lot of foreigners, but in that neighborhood, they were like staring at me like, who are you and why are you here? I rarely get that anywhere in the city. So like that was pretty far south, but there's a major street in the eastern part of Mexico City called Calzada de Tlalpan. I will not live to the east of that. When you get that way, those neighborhoods lose a lot of the perks and extras that I am interested in. So that's why I have a hard time saying like specific neighborhoods that I wouldn't live in. But yeah, like I know how far east I am willing to go. I know how far south and how far north I am willing to go. But I still think we'll do some neighborhood talk maybe in a separate video. Okay. Thanks, D. Adelis, for the super chat. I appreciate that. Thank you, Alicia, for the super chat. Okay, we have been here for an hour and 8 minutes. We're going to call this a night at an hour and 10 minutes. So if you have any last ditch apartment questions, now would be the time to ask. I don't know if anybody is wondering, when we talked about needing a fiador or a cosigner, that there's an insurance policy that you can get instead of. You, the renter, pay for that policy, and it's usually a percentage of a month's rent. I think I paid the equivalent of $300 for that policy. I had it for the first year. I renewed my lease, and my landlord did not ask for another. I wasn't going to buy another one, but if he had asked for one, but he did not. It was like, okay, you're staying, great. Let's do another lease. Thank you, Angela. I am. I probably got to put it in the microwave now because it's a little cold, but thank you. All right, y'all. 15 seconds. Thank you for joining me on a Wednesday night. I don't know. I kind of like this going live in the middle of the week. Maybe I will switch days. So y'all enjoy the rest of your week. If you like this video, subscribe to the channel, and I will see y'all next time. Bye, guys.